Got the pen and the paper in your hand. Got the story going, but you wanted to expand. We'll help you on your journey, let us lend you a hand. Join the show. So let's write the book TV show. Grab your pen and paper and we're gonna let it flow. Talking about write the book TV. Join the show.
Welcome to Write the Book TV. I'm your host, Kimberly LeBeau. Each week we show up here talking about all things writing and publishing. And this week we have a special guest joining us, the author of Produce from Pressure, Angela Sharpe. Welcome to the show, Angela. How are you?
I am well, Kimberly. Thank you so much. It's really good to be here.
Absolutely. I just love your book. I love the cover. I love the content. It's just so rich. So let's talk about it. On the back of your cover, I wanted to let the audience know what it said on your back cover because I thought it was so profound. You said, many have lived years desperately and carefully crafting a reality that makes sense to them and would be acceptable to the world, instead of acknowledging the raging war they are actually living through and dealing with on the inside and around them. I really like that as the intro on the back of your book to let the readers know what they were getting. And so let's talk a little bit about Produce from Pressure. I know when we started working on the project and you conveyed what you wanted the cover to be, that you were really wanting to make the correlation between your life experiences and the story of the diamond.
Yeah.
And so why was that important to you?
So because of the difficulties and the challenges that I've experienced in my life and coming to a place where I saw myself in a better place. Mm-hmm. There was a time in my life where I didn't think that I would make it. I always thought I would die at an early age. I just thought that my life would consume me. But then I got to the other side of it. And it was important for me to share a message to readers that you can produce something from the difficulties of your life.
Yeah.
And I wanted this book to be different. I wanted it to send a very powerful message. And I spent a long time trying to figure out what would be that connection. What is it that I'm going to correlate my experiences to? And the diamond came to me, and I did some research about all of the processes and the pressure that had to go into creating something beautiful, right? And something valuable. And so I said, okay, this is it. This makes a lot of sense because this very much mirrors a lot of the difficulties that I've experienced. And I'm not to say I'm as perfect as a diamond, but I'm multifaceted. I can say today with confidence and boldness that I am beautiful.
Amen.
And I want my readers to know that.
Yeah, that's good. And once I, read the story, and I was like, oh yeah, this is why she wanted it to mimic that, because I agree with everything you just said. So it all came full circle. And so in the beginning of the book, you talked about your childhood and being raised by your maternal grandmother. You said being in a strict but stable environment, but then it was interrupted. And so please share, as much as you feel comfortable sharing in that platform about what interrupted your life at that point and what you wrote about in the book.
So interruptions are something that I would become very comfortable with in my life, right? So at that time, my grandma took me in because both of my parents, weren't ready to be parents. So my dad took me to live with his mom, and my mom, I didn't meet her. She left when I was an infant. And so about 5 years old, my dad came back into the picture, and that was the interruption. At that time, I think my grandma, his mom, thought it was a good idea for me to live with my dad. He shared that he had a family and he wanted me to be a part of it, and what mother wouldn't agree to that story. And so that interruption would take my life through hell, and I would experience things that no little girl should, and would take me on a very difficult journey, but one that I was able to persevere through, and grateful that I can be here to share, because there's so many other women, so many little girls, boys,
Yeah.
that have experienced some of those very same things.
Yeah. Wow. So you wrote that to that point, your ability to choose for yourself was no longer an option. You wrote that your voice was silenced and your safety compromised, but you managed to maintain your ability to play in your imaginary world and dream and color in your mind. And I know with a lot of stories of childhood trauma that we hear from adults today, even with celebrities who have been through this sort of thing, they talk about finding some kind of alternative means to be able to cope and survive. And so, do you believe that that's what allowed you to survive those tragic moments?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. I think there was a part of me that needed to remove myself from what was happening in order to get through it and to endure it. And so I would go into my safe place was in my mind because my environment wasn't safe. And in retrospect, as I look back and as I think back on the story, and I came into social work because I wanted to understand these things. And the more I read and the more I studied, it made perfect sense to me that I would retreat into my mind because that's where it felt the safest for me. And I would create stories and visions in my head so that I can escape the challenges and, the pain, the hurt, those things that I was dealing with on a daily basis, and I had no one to turn to. So that was my safe place.
And so, what role did your faith play in rebuilding your life?
It played a very, very integral part of my healing process. I think without my faith, I don't know where I would be. My faith is what led me to understand the importance of forgiveness. My healing began when I was able to forgive, when I was able to understand, when I was able to accept that what happened to me wasn't necessarily, yes, it was difficult, but it happened for me. When I understand God's purpose and, what God's intention may be, sometimes even through suffering, I was then able to go back and forgive and then allow healing to take place.
And so in the book you talked about what prompted your healing. And so is that what prompted the beginning of your healing? Was the forgiveness piece?
Yes, it was the forgiveness piece. So I, as you can imagine, my life was all kinds of chaos, and I was rebellious at a young age. Even in my early adulthood, I made very, very bad decisions because of the things that I felt in my mind, in my body. I was always looking for a way to medicate myself and to numb myself. And I was running from thing to thing to thing, trying to figure out how can I fit into this world because I didn't feel settled within myself.
Yeah.
But I always knew that there was something more, something outside of myself that had to make sense. And that was something that kept me searching, right? And through a connection, I had a close friend of mine. She was on somewhat of a similar journey with me. We were very close friends. She did not know her dad. She met her dad, at some point in her life, and it turned out that her dad is a pastor. And so she was going to go meet her dad for the first time in her 20s. And I said, okay, I'm going to go to support you. That was the day that my life would begin to change. Because I grew up Catholic, so I always knew there was a God. I always prayed. It was routine, but I never understood relationship. And so when I went to visit that church with her, and I remember the words ministering to me and me just feeling really full, I went to the altar and I just broke. And it's like I poured my soul out at the altar. And I felt like God was there with me. And I felt like years of things that I carried was lifted.
Wow.
And that's how much I needed.
Wow. That's so beautiful. When you said it just broke. It gave you chills.
Yeah, it was a breaking.
Sometimes it's the breaking
Absolutely
that gets us to
necessary.
the other side. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow. Love that. You talked about forgiveness, and how important was that on your journey to healing?
So I don't know that we can fully heal if we don't forgive. I don't know that that's even possible. I may have had some missteps in my forgiveness journey, which I went back and wrote it. I believe forgiveness must first start with yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
I did it the other way around. I felt I needed to forgive my dad for what he's done. I needed to forgive my mom. I needed to forgive anyone who's hurt me along the way. And that gave me some comfort, and it made me feel better. It healed my panic disorder. And I kid you not, I suffered from intense panic and anxiety. I could not be alone. I could not be in dark places. And it was very bad. It was debilitating. I couldn't function. And it wasn't until I started my healing journey when I went back and spent some time with my dad as an adult. And I got to see him and an understanding of who he is. And I realized at that point that I needed to forgive him because there were some things that he did, some of it outside of his control. And so once I forgave him, those anxieties, the panic that I felt, those things dissipated. And I do not suffer from panic disorder anymore.
Amen.
I do not. So I tell folks all the time that you have to release yourself and people from the prisons of your pain and your past. You have to. If not, because you're constantly worked up and anxious about, what's going to happen next. And those things are not healthy. Your nerves are constantly wired and worked up because you're in constant flight mode. You know what I'm saying? And so I needed to reset that, and forgiveness gave me the opportunity to do that.
That's beautiful. Wow, what a lesson for our viewing audience. And somebody who might be, stuck.
Yeah.
Probably just released and freed someone. So that's just so powerful.
I so hope so.
And so in the process of writing this book, because book is deep, right? So in the process of writing the book, what was it like for you to relive a lot of that and to be able to pen your story?
Yeah, so I took a deep breath because, I do believe that you have to, I said breaking earlier, you have to break, allow yourself to break. You gotta feel what you feel, allow the emotions to flow, release them, and then get back to it. That was my journey in the writing, because I would get to a certain part of my experience, and then I would find myself stuck in those moments. I would have flashbacks. I was having flashbacks of some of the things that I encountered. There were moments where I was writing and I'm flowing with my writing, and then I would get to a place where I literally couldn't move forward, and I would break. And there were times when my little girl needed to be comforted. I would ball up in a corner in my room and just cry it out, because I had to grieve for her as I was writing this book. Grieve for the things that she had endured, that she really didn't have the time to express to anyone, the pain, the hurt. So I did a lot of crying, a lot of cleansing, a lot of mourning for my little girl, and healing and forgiving myself. But it was definitely a stop and go process for me, one that was necessary, because to produce something like this, I have to be in a position where I can stand in my own strength, in my own power, because the purpose of the book is to help other people to heal. And if I'm not healed, I really can't help anybody else.
And so do you think in the writing that there was a certain degree of healing that was within the writing?
100%. It was intentional. It was intentional. God, this was something I knew I needed to do for a long time. God knew. He knew that my healing was wrapped up in that book. And so, yes, absolutely.
I mean, my viewers, they hear me say it almost every week, every segment, that there is healing through writing.
Absolutely.
And so for you to just confirm that again, it's just so great. And I love just watching people in that process, because I went through it. That's how my whole writing journey started, was being in a healing process, and that's what allowed me to move forward and bring about forgiveness. It's just such a journey. I call it the journey of the writer. And so I'm excited that you were able to do that and experience that for yourself. And so that's really, really awesome. And so why was it important for you to share your story?
It was important for me because there are too many girls, too many women whose voices have been silenced with shame. The statistics related to sexual abuse, incest, molestation, it's ridiculously high. It's underreported, and I have lost my voice for most of my life, and I made a promise to God that when I got it back, that I would continue to use it and I would inspire others to find their voice. I think that it takes someone to stand up and to say it and to own it, to create space for other people to do the same. You have to remove the shame. You have to remove the shame. And what happens when you remain silent is the shame feeds in darkness and it feeds inside. It thrives in that space.
Yeah, true.
So when I open my mouth and share my truth, you can't hold it against me anymore. Right? So I put it out there. And so my goal is that other women, other girls that may read the book, that may come across it, can begin to find their voice and can dispel their shame and begin to own who they are post-trauma.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask you what impact you wanted it to have, but it sounds like
Absolutely.
you know that would be it. And so what is the continued work?
Yeah.
Like from, where do you go from here with this message, and how is it gonna reach and do exactly what you set out for it to do?
Absolutely. You and I spoke about this some time back. I thought my assignment was done once I wrote the book and you put it on the shelf.
No.
The readers will read it. They'll do what they do with it. But that's not the case, right? And so readers have been reaching out and saying, "Hey, I need to talk to you because I've seen myself in this book and I've never shared this with anyone. I need to hear how you got through this journey." And so I've been doing a lot of one-on-one counseling. I am a licensed social worker, and I'm also a PhD in life experiences. And so I do that, and I also, in my own ministry, I do women's ministry, and so I go out to different churches and, just share authentically because, in a lot of our churches, there's not a lot of room to talk about these things.
Yeah, true.
There isn't. You hear it from the pulpit, the Bible says certain things about healing, but a lot of space isn't created for women to talk about what they're dealing with. And so I go in, and sometimes the team comes in with me and we create space for that work to happen. I do it in schools. I am open to sharing my message just about anywhere on my social media platforms. I think if I wasn't sure what my life's purpose is, I am now. This is it. This is my life's purpose, is to allow my vulnerability to bring healing to others.
That's good. Allow my vulnerability to bring healing to others.
Absolutely.
That's beautiful.
Sometimes we take for granted that because I can be vulnerable, I can tell people all the time, "Oh, vulnerability is a strength," but it's easier said than done.
Absolutely.
If the other person hasn't done the work yet to get to that place where they can be safe enough to be vulnerable.
Yeah. Feel safe enough to be vulnerable.
Absolutely.
Wow. Yeah, that's good. And so what piece of advice would you give to someone who's watching us today who has a story, who has experienced some type of traumatic thing? They're not sure, if they can be so vulnerable and put it out there. Like, what piece of advice would you give to someone who's thinking about writing a book, but they just, haven't made that leap to go ahead and do so?
Yeah. I would say connect with others that are doing it already. I did a lot of that before I found my way to you. I connected to other writers. I connected to other motivational speakers to say, "Hey, I think I want to share my story. I'm just not sure how to go about it." And just listen to the wisdom and counsel from others who've done it. So I think that's one way to go. But I would encourage you, if you have a story to share, I do not believe that we go through things in life to keep it to ourselves.
True.
Everyone has a story. Everyone has a book. I would say do it. Do it. If not for yourself, do it for others. Other people are in need of your message so that they can be set free. We're just vessels, I think, in this earth. We're vessels, and some of us are chosen. Some can endure hardships more than others, and for that, kudos to you. You've been tasked with the ability to carry the weight of whatever your experience is so that other people can step onto that platform with you and walk out their healing. So I would say do it afraid.
Yes.
Do it afraid.
Absolutely.
I was certainly 100% afraid putting it out there because sometimes your story involves others, right?
True.
Family, community, friends, whoever else was a part of your journey with you, but anchor in your story, your message, your truth. No one can take that from you, right? So do it afraid.
Yeah, that's an important piece that you just brought about. Because a lot of people fear that. There are other people tied to my story, but there's a way to do this.
Absolutely.
Like you said, center around your story, what the impact was for you, and then how you survived and how you're thriving now. So there is a way to do that.
And be integral, right?
Right.
And you know when you're healed, because when I first started writing this book, it sounded a lot different than it does now. So when you are in a certain place in your healing, your message sounds different. It's not angry. It's not this person did this and they made me feel that way. It's more about this was my experience. I was able to give credit to my parents. They brought me into this world. And this isn't a message to shame. This is the message to say this is what I endured, and this is how I'm going to use it to empower others. So be integral in the way you tell your story.
Wow, this is so beautiful. Thank you so much. So we want our viewers to be able to stay connected with you, and so tell them, how they can follow you on social media, where they can find your book. How do they stay connected with you?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Absolutely.
To the viewers, you can find me on, my book is on www.producefrompressure.com. You can also find it on Amazon. My Instagram is sharp.empowerment. My Facebook is also Sharp Empowerment. And I'm also on LinkedIn. For those of you that are on LinkedIn, it's Angela Sharpe. We are in progress of producing a journal, Produce from Pressure Journal. So that should be coming very soon. And I hope that you find it very helpful in your healing journey.
Awesome. Thank you so much for you traveled to be here, and so I'm so honored to have you here. Glad you were able to make it here today to be able to share with our audience, because I thought this was such an important conversation, and I'm really hoping that people who are struggling in this area will pick up a copy of your book, work through it. You even have reflection points in the book that are very, very helpful, and so I'm just excited about what's next for you, and really happy about the work that you're doing, and just delighted to have you here on the show today. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
Absolutely, you're welcome. And to our viewing audience, thank you for joining us for another segment of Write the Book TV. We'll see you back here next week. Bye.
So let's write the book TV show.